happy. Thank you, happy.
Welcome back to Lily's second favorite Star Trek talk show, A Captain's Log. We know Will Wheaton tugs at the heart beating beneath Lily's uniform for the Ready Room show on Paramount Plus. What's not to like?
You may be right about that. No! The Ready Room is a close second. Being on set here doing this show together has evoked a passionate following and sincere love for all things Star Trek with you, BK, and our interviews and news, of course. He's Brian Kreutz, by the way, and yours truly, I'm Lily Fox-Lim, and we're going out on a limb.
That's right! Lily has a plan in place to ace this shot. This week, there's no news, only our points of views.
Plus, Carl's points of views on our fast break. The ball's in your court, BK, behind the back.
Yes, the Industrial Revolution was another of those extraordinary jump shots you just made to move forward, the story of civilization, proverbially speaking. However, your jump shot is my cue to then say it's a risky business, Hollywood is.
Ooh, that it is.
Yes. In our Star Trek news segment today, Star Trek The Next Generation broke mucho records and still didn't get the notoriety it deserves for much of its run back in 1987 through 1994 on syndicated television. Hollywood is going out on a limb for yet another Star Trek iteration, that being Star Trek Picard, which is now jumping forward to recognition and success. Picard having won 4 Saturns out of its 7 nominations in season 3, including for Best Science Fiction Series, Best Actor for Patrick Stewart. Can you do it?
Stewart.
You did it. And also supporting actor prizes for Jerry Ryan and Jonathan Frakes.
Jonathan Frakes. Yes. There's much publicized slightness against the science fiction giant Star Trek over the years, so if winning an Oscar or an Emmy is the most important event in the career of an actor, an extraordinary moment beautifully made and celebrated, or as Sophia Loren states, some people live their whole life just to win an Oscar.
You sound like Sophia Loren. News of old is a continuing mission and a Star Trek news story here on A Captain's Log. Congratulations to the cast, crew, and these fine actors who won Saturn Awards for Star Trek Picard.
Carl Kocis, our writer here on A Captain's Log, is a lifelong Trekkie, not just at heart, but with his soul and very essence of his being. He's reviewed Star Trek Strange New World Season 2 as a whole, so Brian, let's get started for this writer's ride of a storied season.
That's right, Lily. We're going to talk heavily about Star Trek Strange New World Season 2, thanks to our writer Carl's insight into reviewing these follow-up hit seasons.
Oh yeah! Can't wait for this in-depth review, including casting Carol Kane from the hit 70s TV series Taxi.
Oh, that's right. I think I've seen a few reruns of that old show. It was a good one. Actually, Christopher Lloyd was in that one, the old Scrooge from Star Trek 3.
Wow.
We got to give you those tie-ins, Trekkies. Yes, Kane brings a surprisingly familiar face to the second season playing Chief Engineer Pelia. She's from a race called the Lenathanites that can live to be thousands of years old. Can you imagine?
No.
Only Vulcans can live, what, 200 like Mr. Spock?
Yeah.
So Mr. Spock, in fact, and the crew devise a plan to steal the Enterprise, which Pelia uncovers and offers an improved escape plan for the rescue mission to Parnassus, Beta. Now, Pelia taught engineering at Starfleet Academy and knows every single grade that she gave out to the crew, particularly Commander Una Chin Riley, number 1, who later reveals she is an Illyrian, a genetically engineered race prohibited from even having Starfleet service.
Ooh, another episode our writer Carl loves, I loved, you loved, and most of the Star Trek universe fans enjoyed was the episode Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. Noonien Singh enters a time warp alternative where Kirk is the captain, everything has changed, and they share their first kiss. In a struggle, Kirk and Noonien Singh time travel to a different Earth where a different Pelia runs a store called Archaeology, fencing stolen property. Kirk is killed by a Romulan assassin from the future who Noonien Singh kills protecting Khan and taking revenge. She returns a time-traveling device to a time traveler agent, terminating her time travels for the moment and restoring her to the original timeline. A recent discovery of cultural contamination on Regal 7 demands an on-site investigation by Captain Pike, denying Ortega's first opportunity for an away team. And once left for dead, survivor Ensign Zach is back. Pike truly believed Ensign Zach was killed in the mission, but Zach isn't concerned about cultural contamination and fights to the death with Pike to remain king and the Lotus Eaters.
Oh my gosh, that's fantastic. I love that episode. Great review, Lily. And one of my faves all time in Star Trek Strange New Worlds short and early history was that episode. We need more than 10 episodes of this show each season,
We
Lils.
really do. We
Absolutely.
do.
We talked about that before we were even taping today. Now, in another solid episode, Nurse Chapel and Mr. Spock enter a time transport tunnel. And this is for problem solving. When they emerge, Spock has lost his ears. What? It's all about Spock is the pointed ears, right?
Yeah.
However, he has a new annoying human trait, like laughing. Okay.
So annoying.
It's so annoying. All the while, the engagement dinner is scheduled to take place on board the Enterprise with Spock's mother and T'Pring's parents. When it becomes impossible to return Spock to normal, Nurse Chapel, Ortega, and Uhura travel to the talking colors of the time tunnel, and Chapel admits her affection for Spock. Upon her return, Chapel injects Spock with a cure right before he admits his love for her. Also, T'Pring, his fiancée, decides that Spock and she should take a little bit of time apart. Meanwhile, Nurse Chapel figures it was time to plant a big sloppy kiss on our friend, Mr. Spock, and a romance is born.
Oh, Spock will forever be a romantic in that Vulcan heart of his, even though he would probably hate that I said that.
Yes, I wholeheartedly agree, Lily.
In almost all cases, yes. But talk the talk and walk the walk, or trek the walk and talk the trek, right, BK? BK will continue with a question for our guest, Robert della Santina, in part 2 of our interview here on A Captain's Log.
A Captain's Log returns in a moment.
Welcome back to A Captain's Log, a career that goes back so long ago when Bryan was born in 1977. Popular network TV shows like Charlie's Angels, Heart to Heart, and Family, starring Emmy Award winner Seda Thompson, were household television shows where our guest Robert della Santina effectively worked as either an assistant director or a production manager. Rising through the ranks, we continue our discussion about his time on Star Trek Deep Space Nine here on A Captain's Log.
So as a production manager, can you give us an episode name or maybe a memory where you received a difficult decision that you can maybe pinpoint to that of the fans here on A Captain's Log watching that would recognize something from Deep Space Nine?
Actors go up sometimes. And then the minute you go up, you start getting nervous. And then this makes you go up even more. It's like sometimes you get people get a laughing spell. You can't stop until you just say, everybody take a break, walk away. There are many instances where you end up going over for one reason or another. A particular instance that happened one night, we were on the promenade, and it was a scene with Jadzia, Dax, and I forget who the other actor was. It might have been one of the guest actors. But basically the scene started where they're walking along the promenade. They come up to where where the food replicators are, and they sit down to have a drink or a meal or whatever it was. Well, it's a fairly complex situation because you've got extras moving back and forth, the camera's moving, and you have to, and the dialogue is happening between the two of them as they're walking and talking. So we start. I happened to be on the set that night, and it was towards the end of the evening. So, and I think the director purposely scheduled it that way for himself because he said, I can do this, and it should go fairly well, and then we get them onto the table, and the coverage should be very easy. Okay, fine. But it starts with a walk and talk. So I'm there watching, and they go and they start, and they go a few feet. And Jadzia goes up on something. She says, oh, I'm sorry. All right, fine. Reset all the actor, reset all the background, reset the camera, the dolly, whatever. Okay, we go again. Again, they start walking and talking. They go further. And then she goes up again for some reason. Now, okay, 2 takes, whatever, keep going. There was nothing that was printable, unfortunately, because normally if that happens, then like you say, you fix it in post. If in the master you can't get all the way through it, well, you cut and you say, fine, we'll pick it up because I'm going to be cutting away at that moment that the line was flubbed. Well, we go again. And for some reason, it goes a little bit further and she goes up again. Well, rather than go through each one, we got to the point where I think there were 10 or 11 takes to get them finally to the table. Those 15 takes and the resetting, that was a major to-do. We went into some heavy overtime and penalty, but it was one of those situations where you couldn't push the scene to another day.
Oh, Terry Farrell Dax, what? Behind those scenes. Wow, what a story. And you were there for it, Bobby D.
It was something.
Yes, tell us about working a scene where so many variables made Deep Space Nine a challenge, or just talk about production on Deep Space Nine.
When you plan a production and you break it all down from the very beginning, it's mathematical almost. A script is X amount of pages. You have X amount of days to shoot it in. In our instance, it was the average was seven days, and normally production hours are 12 hours. The 12-hour day is normal. It's 7 to 7, stuff like that. So there's no way around it, and budgets are designed to pay those costs. Now, because the business is fickle, you can't really bank on you can't bank on the show exactly taking 7 days or exactly 12 hours or whatever, because there are too many variables. If you look at a sound stage and you see what's happening, you see all these people doing, what are they doing? Well, they're all doing something, whether it's makeup, whether it's hair, whether it's set dressing, whether it's set construction, whether it's filming, whether it's sound. Everybody has a job, and they all have to work in unison.
Going over budget on an episode can be really tricky. It can be a tricky balance, Bobby D, as I understand it. But please talk about trust in making budget decisions and what you do when you go over budget on an episode.
If a producer would question, well, why are you doing this and why did that? The production manager has to say, look, you've hired me to watch your purse strings. You have to trust me. If I go over budget here or I go over budget there, you have to trust me. That's what you're paying me for. Don't panic, because we have a plan that ultimately things will cover themselves. Most of the time it works. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you get burned. Again, then you go tail between your legs and says, well, we missed it, but we'll make it up maybe on the next show. And we'll get to that about how you offset a show that goes over and how you go to the producers and say, hey, producers, we don't have any money left, so the next show we'd better cut back, make it a bottle show where we're only in one set, where we don't go somewhere.
A captain's log returns in a moment.
This is a really cool Deep Space Nine person behind the scenes in Bobby D. So Star Trek Deep Space Nine had so many sets on the sound stage, Bobby D, and on location shoots in and around Griffith Park in Los Angeles, with efficiency in mind for shooting back-to-back scenes or leaving a location and coming back to it in the same episode. What resolutions and workarounds did you come up with that were crucial to staying on schedule? Go through this in the writers and producers discussions you had with them on how this works collaboratively.
How you resolve that problem cinematically, that if you can't go back, or that you have to come up with a solution. That's what the question's really all about. Deep Space Nine was not a heavy location show, thank God. I worked other shows where out of a 7-day show, you're on location for 3 days. The character of the show of Deep Space Nine, fortunately, we were not a heavy location show, and thank God that it wasn't, because the show was not geared to be on location. And I'll get specifically to that. Unlike a lot of other shows that I did, like Charlie's Angels or Heart to Heart, where we were on location on a 7-day show, we were on a location normally 3 to 4 days sometimes, and then the balance of the schedule would be indoors. So that was really a house of cards, because every day, again, was scheduled a certain amount of pages, a certain amount, and if you missed it, it was impossible to go back. I remember one on Heart to Heart where we were at a golf course and we weren't getting all the coverage. Well, there would be no way that the next day we could go back to the golf course because they were having a tournament or something. So we were in and out, and we had to. And we carried stuff back to the studio, luckily, because a tree is a tree, grass is grass. We would have the capability on the stage to do a close-up or something that might have been missed, and we could duplicate the set. On Star Trek, it was a little more difficult, but as I say, we didn't have many locations. But I can remember one particular one where we were out on location, and it was a night shoot. Fortunately, in this particular instance, where I believe Kira was involved, and we were in some kind of a foresty area, and there was a stream and water involved. A difficult location to light and to shoot. So therefore, whatever problems created the delays were justified. But justified, you can never say it was justified, because it's up to the crew to make up the difference, or to figure out how stay on schedule. It's always the little guy that has to figure it out. When it would be helpful if the director would say, okay, guys, I don't need that shot. That rarely happens. So it's the DP and the grips and the electricians and the prop guys that say, oh, okay, well, we'll get you what you need. And moving on, or back to the situation where the scene with Kira, whatever, we had done the master, and we had fallen behind enough to where it was threatening a problem that we might not finish the location at night, which should really be disastrous. In one case, in another case, thank God that it was at night, because we got to a point, and with my first assistant and with, fortunately, the director, we realized that, hey, we're not going to finish the scene completely. How can we do it on the stage? Well, number one, a plus, it was at night. Number two, it was bushes and trees and water and mud and stuff like that. Wonderful. We can do that in a flash. Herman Zimmerman can come up with trees and bushes and greens, and construction can come up with the dirt and the sand, and the special effects can have the water. So we can do that. So we were able to, with a team effort, with the important people, the director, and the actress, because it was going to put her through another harrowing experience getting dirt now. But she says, hey, God, fine. So we elected, or the director elected, he says, oh, look, I can change the end of the scene in a way where she falls down or whatever, and she's down on the ground, and as long as we have her and the dirt, it'll match.
That's so cool. Herman Zimmerman, you were able to finish the on-location scene and duplicate it on a soundstage, originally being on location?
Wow.
That's impressive.
You know, on our season finale last year, Dennis Madalone mentioned on the episode Battle Lines, British director Paul Lynch gave the helm over to Dennis to direct the day of fight scenes on that episode. Do you remember asking Dennis when the final scene was going to wrap? And can you please explain what one of the last shots in Hollywood is and it's where it got its nickname?
That's what the production manager asks any director towards the end of the day. It was a famous assistant director by the name of Abby Singer. Charming man, charming man. It ended up, though, that for some reason, either they were tricking him or he wasn't paying attention. And he did it enough times that he would say, "That's the last shot," and then he either went off too early with that statement, or it just happened that he made a mistake. That he would say, "All right, fellas, last shot." Well, it ended up that there was always another shot after that, and so that became the Abby Singer.
Oh my gosh, yes, I always wonder what that term Abby Singer meant when you're rapping for a day as an actor. Oh, Bobby D, what about stunts and double sequences and second unit? Can you tell us about Battle Lines and this director Paul Lynch story with Dennis Madalone? I mean, from your perspective.
Whenever you're doing any stunt sequences, it's difficult to break down a sequence or a fight sequence, because every time you roll on a stunt, it doesn't necessarily go exactly as you need it. You may get the master shot that you like, but all of a sudden the actors end up, and let's say that you love it and you print it, but all of a sudden the actor or double ends up not in the position that you wanted him to be. So that calls for, okay, we got to get the actor into that position, but it doesn't work the way the stunt can. So we need an additional cut to get the stunt actor in the proper position. So you can use part of the master that you love, and then you cut away and you go to the coverage again with the stuntman, so that when you go to the third shot, the stuntman is in the position that you can put the actor in. So, and that can happen, I mean, very rarely. When there's physicality involved in anything, you can't. You're not a computer. You're not a robot. You can't judge it. If you swing too hard, you spin around too much. If you don't hit him enough, and the hit looks fake, you got to go again. So it's very difficult to do that, as opposed to a scene where you have a master at the dinner table and you've got them everybody sitting there, and then all of a sudden you say, okay, we need a shot over Papa to Mama, and a shot over Mama to Papa, and a reaction on the kids. Okay, so that's 4 or 5 shots. You know that. In a stunt sequence, it's never that way. You try to do the best you can. That's why you use professional stuntmen that will try to hit their marks. But when it doesn't happen, you gotta make it work. Again, you gotta get film in the camera, and it's gotta look right. So it's as I recall, Paul was not really an action director, and that's why he gave it over to Dennis, who was very much a professional and wanting to please. And if I went down, I went down to the set to ask him exactly what I would have asked Paul. But naturally, he couldn't give me an answer, direct answer, because of the possibility of the stunt not working exactly. So you have to accept that, and I accepted that. Obviously, you can't blame it on the director. Actually, you'd love to blame it on the director. Said, well, we went over because this guy doesn't know what he's doing. That would be nice. And then you take the onus off the stuntman. off the coordinator. But obviously, in this particular instance, poor Dennis was backed into a corner, and he did the best he could. And whatever happened had to happen. And if it was more shots than we needed, if it was more than an Abbey Singer, that's fine. You're committed to it, and you've got to do it. And again, there we go. If the coins are rattling in somebody's purse, the producer says, "Bobby, what happened?" I said, "We had to do it. The stunt didn't work. You guys wrote the stunt." I wouldn't say that. But I mean, if you could say, "Hey, Mr. Producer, if you wrote the scene in a telephone booth, then that would be easy." And that does bring up a story that's kind of related that happened on Hart to Hart years ago. There was a stunt that was supposed to happen. We couldn't get it. Everything went awry. There was an old saying on all of our action shows: you can fix any scene that doesn't work with a telephone booth. We had the telephone booth on we couldn't get the shot. We were losing the day. What we needed was basically, the stunt would have been visual, but it was really a matter of communicating an incident that was going to happen or was supposed to happen. So it ended up that we couldn't get the stunt. It ended up that the actor who was supposed to be involved in the stunt ended up in a telephone booth calling the other side of the scene, telling them what had happened, that the car went over the hill or something. And we fixed it that way. And it worked.
Well, Bobby D and Lili, I will never look at a telephone booth the same ever again. And actually, there's a few left in Los Angeles.
A few, very few.
Now, we know the final shot of the day is a relief for you, Bobby D. Give us that feeling on the final steps leading up to asking the director when to wrap the shooting day on Deep Space Nine.
What makes life worth living sometimes for a production manager is knowing that you're going to be on schedule, that you're going to make the day, that all the hard work that you've put in and everybody's put in is going to pay off. It is akin to probably the only thing that really makes a difference, and I think that we've all been through it, is you're in school, college, and whatever, and you are getting ready for a huge exam. Absolutely deal breaker, that this could mean an A, a B, a C, or a D. And you prepare and you prepare and you prepare. And then you go in and with all that you've prepared, I'm not prepared. I'm not prepared. This is going to be awful. So you go in, you sit down on the desk, the professor or the teacher comes into the hall or into the room and says, changing plans. We're not going to have the test until next week. That's what it feels like at the end of every day when you get the call or you go to talk to the director and he says, yeah, we're on the last shot. That's what it's about. Exactly. I couldn't outline it any better than that. The relief is unbelievable.
A captain's log returns in a moment.
You've returned to your only broadcast television source for Star Trek news and interviews. Lili and I welcome you back to A Captain's Log. Hollywood, the center metropolis of entertainment, science fiction, and Star Trek, which is undebatable as the center of science fiction's finest and longest running saga, Star Trek. Now, Star Trek Deep Space Nine's 7-year run with unit production manager Robert della Santina is our discussion today. Let's continue with Bobby D.
Bobby D, give us an anecdote or hijinks that would happen on the set of Deep Space Nine that maybe led to a delay in production? Or tell us about from the pilot episode Emissary, if you have any stories to share there.
Throughout 7 years, there are a lot of incidences that happen that you have to make allowances for, go over budget, reschedule. Like I said, a lot of the stuff you plan and sometimes it doesn't happen. That's the nature of the game. you're not always in control. One that I remember very clearly was almost on, it may even have been the last day of shooting, where, and this was on the pilot, and it's related to the scene where they're on the ship and there is an explosion. I don't remember all the details, but I know that that's how Sisko, I believe, loses his wife. There is a fire, there is an explosion. People are running around like crazy. A very dramatic and action-packed scene. Well, that went fairly well. However, to spice it up, we needed, or the director had requested, to be able to do some special effects of a ball of fire with people running through it. Well, obviously, we couldn't actually expose extras or stunt people to a ball of fire. Nowadays, I guess with CGI, which we had, but we didn't use much of it then. We couldn't expose the people, or couldn't afford to create that kind of a situation on the stage that would satisfy the director. So we got the art department and the construction and the visual effects department and said, look, we need to have this fireball envelop or engulf the tunnel or the corridor. And so we all got together and had a meeting, and effects and the visual effects guy said, well, you know what, we could do this in miniature. Obviously, we did a lot of miniature work. When you're looking at all the opening credits with the spaceships and leaving the station, those were all miniatures. And with the magic of cinema, we make it work. So we said, oh, okay, well, we can build, how big does it have to be? And the guy says, oh, well, we could build it half scale, which would be fine. So instead of a 30-foot long full-size corridor, all we had to build was like a 15-foot half scale of the corridor. Okay, great. So we're on the set, we're doing everything ready. We do the big scene, and we're running late. We are running late, there's no question. David Carson was the director. And he and I had a cordial relationships, but there were times when there was a bit of friction. But obviously, we came out of it both alive, no bruises, and we were still talking to each other at the end of the shoot. Anyway, so he's running behind, and all he needed was to get this final scene with the actors, and then we were going to go and film the corridor and let everybody go. And it was late. We were on the cusp of spending some money. So we get a print on that, and while he was rehearsing and shooting that scene, we had built the miniature on the same stage. I think it was stage 18, about 15-20 feet away from the actual tunnel. And I go over there by myself, and having been a designer and interested in design, I went and I looked at the corridor and I said to myself, oh my God, they built the corridor upside down. I said, we can't shoot this. We have to, that construction's got to, now, it's difficult to say, well, how can a tube have up and down? A tube is a tube. Well, it's not exactly a tube. It was a little bit wider at the bottom than at the top, and the sides had details and curves and stuff, which were obviously not like what we had just shot, which was the big tunnel, the actual tunnel. So I said, we can't shoot this. There's no way. Even if we go overtime, we can't, because we'd have to turn the set upside down. And I went over to David, and he was very upset because he wanted to know that he had finished on schedule, which he hadn't, but at least that he had gotten the number of days, which we were fat on. And I said, David, we cannot shoot the thing. And he got really almost postal on me.
Oh, wow.
And I said, David, it doesn't matter. I'm going to have to wrap the company. That's it. It's over. We will have to do that second unit, which he didn't want to do. So I pulled the plug, and that was not one of not my nicest days. But we pulled the plug. He accepted, but he didn't want to accept the fact that it was out of his control. He wanted to say, no, we'll turn the tunnel upside down, or we'll shoot it upside, which we couldn't. We couldn't do any of that. That was the situation. On that night, we couldn't because the tunnel was upside down. The next morning, I got a hold of Herman. He came down on the set. Our construction coordinator came down on the set, and they all looked at me, and they said, Bobby, you're absolutely right. It's upside down. I said, I know, guys. I tried to tell David this. He wouldn't believe me. He says, no, it wouldn't have worked upside. I said, I know that. I know that. That's the closer as far as that was the biggest hijinks, so to speak, that the particular shot did not involve actors, but the repercussions were such that we just could not do it, actors or not. But David did get what he needed.
Yeah, all in a day's work in Hollywood.
Bobby D, I really enjoyed your stories on DS9 and going back to my very young days in the 1970s and 1980s TV. Thank you for being with Lili and I here on A Captain's Log.
Wow, what a fascinating half hour it's been to trek through the stars and dock for half an hour with one of Deep Space Nine's finest. You know, BK, you asked some of the most in-depth questions with Bobby D.
Oh my gosh, you asked amazing questions for this
Stop.
unit production manager guy.
Bye for now.
Hello, happy, my old friend. I'm glad you've manifested yourself into a human I can depend on to